Hey, what's up? It's Doug Huntington here. This is the webinar about hiring writers and VAs in general, but we'll focus on writers. I hope that you can hear me, and I hope that we have a few people on. It looks like we have Gary, Stephen, Ryan, Tadage, Allison, Kat, Lachey, Nick, Ethan, and John. So welcome. It looks like a light-ish crowd today. I didn't try to send out an email to the whole email list, so it's just the core group today. I am booked up pretty tight today, so I'm going to try to run a quick session today. And if you could just let me know in the chat, just say hello, say hey, yeah, we can hear you. Make sure everything is good to go. Thanks for joining up today. Funny thing, I've been doing a few Skype calls today, and like Skype keeps crashing like over and over and over again. So I don't know what's up, but I know on my phone they pushed like a new version, but yeah, for some reason on my machine it was messing up, and then the camera wasn't working. It was like sharing my screen, not the camera. So I don't know, anybody having issues with Skype today? Cool. Thanks, Wesley, Ethan, and Nick. Cool. I'm glad everyone can hear me. It's funny, yesterday, I'm having all sorts of tech issues. So yesterday, I went to the coffee shop in the morning just to like get out of the house a little bit. So walked over to the coffee shop since the weather's nice, pleasant here in Montana. And I was going to walk outside. I brought my tripod with me and everything. I was going to walk outside, do the live stream from my phone, just on LTE, which is fast enough around here to do that. And I realized that I wasn't going to be able to like share the live stream yesterday in the same way that I wanted to. So basically, I ended up having to stream. I guess I didn't have to, but I streamed from the coffee shop, which was, I mean, it was like a quarter full, maybe 1/3 full when I decided, hey, I'm going to give it a shot. It's quiet enough in here. I have a microphone. So I had my lav mic and I tried to go live there. And it kind of worked, but then, and everyone said they could mostly hear me, but it was a wreck. That whole live stream yesterday was a wreck. So I'm just going to delete it. But cool. Today we're in good shape. I'm going to go ahead and get moving here. And Kat, hey, thanks for joining up today. Stephen mentions that Skype servers have been having a problem today. So yes, something like that, which is great because I had like 8 meetings scheduled and a bunch more for tomorrow. So all right, let's get to it. I am going to share my screen. Started. All right. And funny thing. So Steph said, "I love the content from yesterday. Don't delete it." Here's the deal. It sounds so terrible. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna delete it. And maybe what I can do is basically record just like a short 5-minute version with you know, some of the Q&A in there. In fact, Steph, if you can send me, like, I know you asked some questions yesterday, just send me all the questions that you had in an email and I'll make sure I answer them. And you know, we'll get to we'll get to that content because it's very interesting. It is good information. All right, today we're going to talk about how to hire writers for niche and authority sites, hopefully without stress. I think most of the people on here know who I am. I'm Doug Huntington from Niche Site Project, and I've confirmed that people can hear me, and that is a picture of my dad and I at Old Faithful in Yellowstone, and my late dog Brody there. But that's a good picture from like last summer. And I've been on a few blogs, featured and or guest post or some sort of podcast guest. So I usually put that in just so you have some confidence that you should listen to me. I have gone and updated this timeline. If people have seen it before, you'll notice there's a new part here. And, I add this timeline in here just to remind everyone that there are a lot of ups and downs in online business. So when things are going great, they can get worse for sure. And I have to remember that because things are going pretty good right now, and I need to make sure I am not getting a big head or anything like that. I'll remind everyone the Q&A is at the end, but feel free to ask questions throughout. We have a core group today, so I should be able to look over there at the questions and hopefully not get distracted. Sandy from Facebook group did say, actually, I think it's a she, but I'm not 100% sure. So she, or maybe he, Sandy said that they were going to watch the replay, and I said I'd give a shout out. So potentially, if you see these, I may experiment with this in Facebook and Facebook groups. Like if you get comments or people pay attention to whatever you post, there's more reach on that post. And that's one of the reasons why there's not very many people on today, is there wasn't many people looking and or commenting at the post. Maybe it was the time of day, maybe people don't care about hiring writers, but my guess is not many people looked and or commented on it. So I just need to do a better job. And part of that could be, me giving a shout out to people that say, hey, I'm going to attend, and give me a shout out. So thanks, Sandy, for doing that. So this is about how to hire writers for niche and authority sites. I am doing a lot of that right now. So it's actually really relevant for me. And I've been hiring a lot of writers over the past the past few months. A while back, I was on a kick, and I think I hired about 8 writers. And I think at this point, about 4 of them are still around. And, a few of them that looked like they were going to be promising ended up not following through as much. And, maybe they just didn't have as much bandwidth. But I'm still hiring more people right now, and I'm sort of looking at, continuing that over the next couple months, where I know writers come and go, and I'll talk about that a little bit, but I'm hiring a few people. I hired 2 new writers this week, and there were 2 others from last week. So hopefully I'll be able to keep them on. So the goal here, so we got to remember what we're really aiming for. By the way, this is a picture from the Cayman Islands from a few years ago, where right on the beach was awesome. So the goal really is not to pay the cheapest amount. So a lot of people are just trying to get the cheapest deal for the content, right? So they'll pay $6 for 1,000 words is what someone referenced to me the other day, and that's just so cheap. I can't imagine you're getting much valuable content at that rate. The goal really is to get the best ROI for every dollar you spend. And, that's something you have to consider, right? If you're only trying to get the cheapest rate, then I guess your context of like your whole set of goals is a little bit off, right? Because we should be trying to get the best ROI. So I could pay less than I do, but I do want to work with people that take it seriously. I want to work with pros, and I don't want to work with people that are just trying to do it as quickly as they can. So here are the facts. I hire my writers from Upwork, and I basically don't hire them anywhere else. There are many other options, but I don't hire outside of Upwork at this time. I pay about $14 or $15 for 1,000 words on average. A lot of times the content may be a little bit shorter. Someone just turned something in that was about 700 words today, and I was like, let's beef it up a little bit. I think there's some more you could add in there. Sometimes it's up to 1,200 if it's something interesting or the writer just happens to really enjoy the topic. If people are good, I pay them more. And that goes back to the, working with professionals. So if I'm enjoying working with someone, I'll give them raises, usually unprompted. That works really well. People like the surprise, and they're more likely to keep working with you if you slowly just give them raises. So of course you'll reach a ceiling, and you'll have to move on at some point. But if people are good, I pay them more. I have a content manager, sometimes more than one. I have paid them as cheap as, $9-10 an hour, and as high as $20 an hour. And like most things, you can get highly qualified people for cheaper than you think. If you, look around a little bit and you're willing to train people some. And then the other thing is, I've gone up to $20 an hour, which is a lot, it's twice as much. But when I look at, how much value that person can bring, it can really be worth it. So even if I pay, say, $15 for a piece of content, and then maybe another $20 for the content, like drafting of the post, and I'll talk about that more. But if I paid this content manager and editor, say $20 to work on one post, I'm in $35 for a piece of content, which isn't terrible if you think that piece of content can bring in money month over month. Like, it can pay for itself pretty quickly, and can be quite an asset to have. So it's worth it, is what I'm trying to say. Typically, it does take that content manager about an hour to edit one post. So that's where I get that information as far as an additional hour or $20 or so on a post. So, typically I'm paying probably like $25 to $35 for one piece of content that's roughly 1,000 words. So to pull it all together, that's where I'm at. I mentioned I'm hiring quite a few writers, and I have been for a little while. You have to work through, the writers that you want to work with. Some of them, the tone just doesn't sound right or something like that. It's hard to put your finger on, but I usually hire twice as many writers as I think I need. And it really can be an ongoing process. So it's not necessarily like the most fun, or is it most fun or funnest? If it's not the greatest thing to spend all your time hiring people, putting job listings up, and there's just overhead and admin that you're doing. It's not super exciting, but it turns out most work, if you just keep doing it over and over again, it's not very exciting. So this is definitely one of those areas where it's not glamorous, but the way I like to do it is treat it with sprints of work. So I said I've been hiring people recently. So a few weeks back, I hired a bunch of people, and then they wrote a bunch of stuff. And then I had to hire a few more people, and they're going to write a bunch of stuff. And I'm actually going to try to line them up and give them, I'm just simplifying it and making up an example, but I would probably, want to give each one of these, say, 5 writers 20 articles to write over the next 3 weeks. I'll just, just as an example. So that'll get me a lot of content, potentially, what did I say, 5 writers and 20. So that's, roughly 100,000 words over the next few weeks. Obviously that will cost money, but at that point, it sort of allows me to work on something else for a little while. So they're working on content, and then I can go, trust that they're in a holding pattern, working in a steady fashion, and then come back to it. Okay, so you could learn from my mistakes. That's probably one of the best ways to learn from mistakes is other people's mistakes. So I'll tell you several that I've made. So at first, Fiverr was sort of like gaining popularity around the time I was getting started 4 years ago in 2013, and part of 2014. I was trying to hire writers from Fiverr, and it was kind of like just it wasn't that good. I mean, it was okay grammar, it was passable grammar. It was mostly correct, but it just wasn't like compelling or anything that would actually convert a visitor to my site to an actual like customer of Amazon, which is our goal for these type of sites. So I was hiring writers from Fiverr, and I think I was just paying like $5. And basically Fiverr keeps a processing fee, takes a commission, whatever they refer to it as. So if you pay $5, usually the freelancer gets $4. So they take about 20, they take 20%. So you can imagine for $4, you're not going to get like anything super high quality. Now, you can upgrade your gigs on Fiverr. So, if you are, trying to work on Fiverr for some reason and it's just easier for you, maybe you just like Fiverr, you would have the opportunity to upgrade your gigs, and sometimes you pay more, so you'd end up paying $15 or $20 for the content, and maybe then it would be better because you get a higher quality writer who's actually getting paid a fair wage. So mistake one, hiring from Fiverr, and you could fill in any other like cheap like marketplace. Not leaving much feedback on the Upwork gig for the freelancer. So basically, I think one of the reasons why I do have really good luck on Upwork is I have a good rating as a client. And part of the reason why I have a good rating as a client is I leave feedback. I leave like sentences of feedback. A lot of clients just don't do it. They leave very short feedback or none at all, maybe just a rating, a star rating. So, by leaving some actual text and maybe being specific, I think my freelancers enjoy working with me. So the first time that they leave me feedback, they may not write much, but next time they usually, they see that my feedback's good and they want to reciprocate and they want to keep working with me. So I'll continue to get good feedback. So at first I wasn't leaving much feedback on Upwork, and it was a little bit harder to actually get, good feedback on my end and then rehire the people. If you leave good feedback, it's pretty likely that the freelancer will be willing to work with you again, and the less admin you have to do by searching for more freelancers, the better. So if you can get them to work with you again, that's a good thing. Next is accepting excuses, and I coach a lot of people, and I hear this often where the person's having an issue with a writer or some freelancer in general, and they're basically getting excuses. So there's all sorts that you may hear. They're usually pretty believable. There'll be excuses about there was a fire in my apartment building and we all had to move out and can't finish it. Now, here's the deal. Things do happen. So I will always humor one excuse, and I'll say, hey, sorry to hear it. When will you have it completed as soon as possible? Something to that effect, just to set expectations. And then if they come through, then that's okay. I probably, unless it's outstanding, I probably won't work with them again anyway, just because, I don't want to receive excuses. But benefit of the doubt, does get the best of me, and I do, let people have an excuse, and if they come through, then they're rebuilding the trust with me, and I'm willing to do that. But if they miss the deadline again and come up with another excuse, I don't even like re-engage with them. Hey, I just say, hey, this isn't working out. I need to work faster, so I'm going to end the contract, and good luck. Keep it for professional, but I basically accept like one excuse, and then if they come back again, I release them, and just say it didn't work out. The cool thing with Upwork is you are protected in those areas. If you contact and communicate with them through the messaging system in Upwork, like Upwork has all that data. So if there's an issue, you could say, yeah, they turned it in late. I asked them about it. I gave them an opportunity to turn it in again, and then they came in with another excuse. So I'm done. You can check the transcript basically, and Upwork will protect you as a client. And next, I do see some questions coming in, so that's awesome. I will come to them at the end. I see Anna says, hello, when will the webinar start? You should be able to see it now, Anna. Hopefully, like if it's frozen or something, or you just hopped on, you'll be able to see everything moving. I recommend maybe you take a look at the replay. So if it is frozen for some reason, try and refresh it. Okay, this is the theme from before, paying too little. So I won't harp on this too much, but basically if you want to get good content, you want to get content that is readable, that's in the tone that you want, you're probably going to have to pay a little bit for it. And I think people often make a mistake that they're trying to get a good deal rather than good quality, and it comes down to actually getting an ROI, a positive ROI, and the best ROI that you can get versus like saving money by not spending much and expecting like that to be the way that you're going to get ahead. So just expect that if you pay a little bit more, you'll probably, not always, but you'll probably get better content. You'll get better work from your writer or VA or whoever you're working with. Right, 3 tips for hiring writers. By the way, just want to do a quick check since I just want to make sure everyone can hear me, everything's good. I know there's like a 30-second delay, so I'll take a little pause here. And just to make sure everyone can hear me and stuff, so we'll see how that works. Hopefully, cool. Nick, thank you, sir. And we'll hop back, and just always got to do those sanity checks. Servers go down here and there. All right, cool. Writers, and I tried to like put in, I have like thousands and thousands of pictures. So this is a picture probably somewhere in, I think South Dakota, but it could be Kansas. I can't remember, but there's a bunch of windmills around there because it's so windy. So yeah, just trying to spice it up a bit here. Okay. Number 1 tip, provide instructions with actual details. So a lot of the job listings, we'll start at the beginning. A lot of the job listings on Upwork are bad. So go take a look, and just, especially around the content area, there are a lot of listings that say, hey, this is a rush job. I need content by tomorrow, and I need, a 1,000 words by tomorrow on topic X, and that's basically all they say. There's not much information, and then I'm assuming, right? I'm assuming that whoever that client is continues with, not very good instructions. And my assumption is, because like I said, I do coach a lot of people. My assumption is a lot of people try and hire writers and they don't give them, much information as far as like what they expect the person to do. So some things that are really helpful are to provide like a sample of kind of what you're looking for. It could be content from your own site where the person can understand the tone. They can see sort of the format of how everything's, organized and literally formatted on the page. To that end, I always let my writers have a look at the style guidelines. So those are usually quite simple, but I just want everything uniform coming in. So I tell them like what font to use, what font size. I tell them to use H2 and H3 tags or headings in some sort of word processing application. Typically Google Docs is what I'm working with, but you could use whatever you want. And if you provide those details, then usually the writer will everything will go more smoothly because they'll know what you're expecting. And even from a formatting perspective, like having you provide the information up front, it sort of sets the tone that you are organized and you expect the work to be pretty good. Additionally, you can use basically a template for like Amazon reviews. So if you go to Niche Site Project and head over to the blog area, there's a Start Here section, and there's like the perfect Amazon review template, and you could basically just show them that document and they'll have a pretty good idea of how it should be put together, like the whole post should be put together. Now if it's informational, usually you can give them sort of free rein. I do anyway, where an informational article should just be written in a logical way. So for me, the format of those it doesn't matter as much. But when you're talking about product reviews, you kind of want to make sure that the writer has a clear idea what you want. So providing actual details in your instructions, super helpful. Examples, really helpful for the writers. And usually that makes it go a lot more smoothly because they know what you expect to receive. So I jumped ahead and mentioned the style guide already. And this can be unique to you, but I'll tell you mine's only probably less than 10 lines, but things like I mentioned, use subheadings, short paragraphs, and you could say, hey, don't write any paragraph longer than 2 sentences long, whatever you want, whatever makes it easier for you or your content manager to actually format the content. Ideally, you're just copying and pasting the content from the writer into WordPress or whatever CMS you're using. And if you could do that, if you can get the writer to write it, as close to how you want to publish it as possible, then you'll be able to reduce the time that the content manager, editor, or yourself is spending formatting the document. If you wanted to, you could even, bring some of the tasks that me personally, that I have the content manager do, you could have the writer do it. So maybe images, you could have the writer pull in images. Totally up to you. But for me, I kind of want the content manager to do it, so the writer is focused on writing, not anything else. By the way, there's no one right way to do this. If you wanted to, right, you could write everything and then hire an editor, for example, to do all the formatting. if you don't happen to enjoy that. Or maybe you love to do the formatting and grab images, so then it makes sense for you to get a writer and then you handle those things that you enjoy doing. Or if you're like me and you don't like either one of those things very much, you could get people to do both, and that's what I do. So anyway, the style guideline is whatever you want it to be, and I would go take a look at the content that you already have formatted, or you could go to a big site like the Wirecutter or Outdoor Gear Lab and look at how they format their content and then describe that. I mean, there is no one right answer for a style guide. You can probably Google it and find one out there and just use that one. But like most things, if you use a template, you should customize it to, your own preferences. You probably can get away with copying a style guideline straight up and it'll probably work fine, because after all, it's just the writer that has to follow it. Next. And after the excuses thing, this is probably one of the biggest things that you need to be able to do. And this is ask for edits if the content is, I wrote bad here, but maybe it's just not what you're looking for. So I literally just hired a person who, actually I'm going off my script a little bit. I hired someone from South America, and she's actually she says she was educated in an English-speaking school, like an international school. And though English isn't her second language, but I was like, she seems pretty sharp. I'll give it a shot. So I'm always testing and breaking my own rules. And the content she sent, there was something a little awkward about the phrasing. So I asked for some edits. This was a trial gig, by the way. So I asked for some edits, and the content wasn't bad. It was just a little bit off, and I don't know what it was. I went back and read it because I did want her to make some updates. I want to keep working with her. I mean, like I said, she seems pretty sharp, and I'm willing to invest the time to train someone if I want to work with them on a long-term basis, right? So the key thing when you ask for edits is to be specific. So here's a bad way to ask for edits. It sounds funny. Can you make some updates so it sounds better? That would have been really bad feedback. And I almost wrote something like that. But instead, I was like, you know what? If I actually want to, communicate with this person, keep working with her and get better feedback, get better content, I need to give her better feedback. I need to be really specific about what I didn't like. So when I went back and read through it, I realized there were a couple run-on sentences that sounded awkward. So I highlighted two of them and I said, these sound maybe like they're too long. It just doesn't sound right to me. Can you shorten these sentences a little bit? And maybe that'll help out. Just let me know when you're finished. She made the updates immediately, and most of the time, if you shorten a sentence, it's a lot more clear. So once she, got rid of the run-on issue there, it sounded a lot better. And it may have not been, grammatically incorrect. It just sounded bad. It didn't fit, and I didn't like the way it flowed. There were a couple other areas too, but I asked her to just refresh the whole thing. Keep an eye out for long sentences that can be shortened. Here's a good example of what I see that I don't like. And she made the edits and it was great. I'm going to hire her again and we'll see how it goes. It may not be a great fit. Like I said, English isn't her first language, but I'm willing to give it a shot. And the point here overall is to ask for edits if there's something that you don't like. You're paying for the content after all, and the critical part is to make sure you're specific about what you're asking for the change to be. If you're vague, if you're if you just say like overall, hey, this isn't what I'm looking for, can you do it again? You're probably not going to get what you want, number one, and then you're probably going to frustrate whoever is working with you. And chances are like you'll continue to have issues unless you communicate clearly. I will also say that I may have like a unfair advantage where like in my corporate career, I was a project manager, and over, the years, I had anywhere from like 3 to 15 people working for me for like spans of time. And I learned, I guess, I think I internalized it, but I learned to, ask people to adjust how they were working so we can get, better results overall. And to do that, you have to be specific. You can't ask someone to try harder. Like that doesn't work. You have to tell them exactly what you want. And also, some people don't like that. They don't like the direct, like ask for stuff. But for writers in this specific case, they seem to be super receptive to specific feedback. I find it to work well. So just be sure you're clear about what you want when you ask for edits. Don't be shy to ask for edits. If they get upset and like, are hostile or anything like that, or they're not cooperative, then they're probably not good to work with. It's really good to find that out as early as possible. Okay, cool. So now we're on to the Q&A. So I will turn on. I am going to go look at the questions. So I see a lot of people ask questions here. So this is awesome. And let's go to Kat. Has lots of them. So what's the max price you pay writers per 1,000 words? I mean, with the rate increases over time. I've gone up to like $22 for 1,000 words for a person who is actually, they had like background knowledge in the topic that they were writing for. So in an interest in their content was really good. It was like a former like journalist and a person that I think he had like a master's in like I think like library research technology or something like that. So it was like a skilled person, and I didn't have to touch his content at all. So up to $22 per 1,000 words, that's 2.2 cents. And that was off of Upwork, by the way. So at that point, like I worked with him off of Upwork for a couple gigs. Kat says, how many writers do you hire per site? It depends. So basically I'll look at sprints of work. So right now, I need to find out how many keywords I could possibly find. But basically right now, I'm like poised to add, hundreds of additional posts to a site over the next 6 months or so. So that means I'll hire several writers. Right now, I have 3 or 4, and I'm looking to bring on a couple more. The other part is I'm slowly adding more, like I'm asking them to do more work. So I started off hiring them for like one job, and then I offered them like longer term gig. So I was like, hey, I'll give you 3 articles at a time. And now I'm trying to find out like the capacity per week. So one person is writing about 10 articles per week, or 10 days or so. So about 1 article per day. And then another person is another journalist, actually. I think I'm going to be able to bring her on to do 8 per week or so. And then, as I'm trialing these other folks, there's potential that they could write, up to 1 per day. Maybe more, but personally, I try not to give them more than 1 per day. I feel like the quality can decline a little bit if you give a person too much. So at that point, right, I mean, your question was how many writers do I hire per site? And the answer is as many as I need. And, at this point, there's a couple things happening that you have to look at, right? So the bandwidth of the entire team, this is all project management like stuff. The bandwidth of the entire team is dependent on, the amount of keywords that I have, the number of writers that I have, and then the content manager and how much work the content manager can do. A lot of times the content manager is the bottleneck, but not always. It turns out my content manager is super efficient and effective, and she's smart, and I'm paying her well, and she her capacity has changed from like 10 hours per week to like 20-ish, maybe 25 hours a week. So at that point, my capacity has gone up, and I see that that is happening, and I'm trying to put more writers in place so that it keeps her busy. So like you have to understand like the bandwidth of your team based on like the different limiting factors. And actually right now, my limiting factor is really the keywords. So if you know much about the keyword golden ratio, they don't just fall out of the sky. You have to go find them. So now that I've addressed certain pieces, like I now have a new bottleneck. It's at the front end, and it's the keyword stuff. So I got to figure that out, which I'm going to figure that out today. So hopefully that answers your question. But basically you hire as many as you need. You should hire them slowly and really just, add one at a time. And as the writers are more used to the system, you can basically just send them keywords. So, the people that have been working with me for a little while that I'm increasing their workload, I am able to just send them a list of keywords, and then I just get articles on the other side. So it's perfect from my perspective. Okay, Ethan says, are all of your sites Amazon-based? Yes. Kat says, what about when you're not really impressed with a writer you hired? I usually just don't hire them again. Do I leave negative feedback? It depends, right? So part of the reason why I'm able to hire people at like a good rate for like high qualifications is because I am saying like, hey, I'm going to give you good feedback here. Like I'm willing to give you good feedback if you're willing to, work with me here. So if they were fine, but I just didn't like the writing, I'll leave them good feedback. If they were actually bad or flaked out, didn't submit, I will leave them accurate feedback. I have left 1 to 2 stars and said, hey, this person left. They didn't communicate, and I ended the contract, and leave it at that. Of course, you want to be factual. And I'm just, in my professional career, after say like the first 2 years, I was like, hey, I just want everyone to think I'm ultra professional all the time. I don't want anyone to, have different comments than that. By the way, as I'm working through the questions, feel free to ask more. Ask plenty of questions here. I have a hard stop though, so if you have them, I'll try not to ramble on and just answer the question. So good questions, Kat, by the way. So yeah, I'm not afraid to leave negative feedback if they're, if the person is a bad freelancer. Okay. Kat asks, do I provide writers with the exact features I want in the articles, like the product features, or do I give them the template and they have to research to know what to include? I usually don't give them the features to cover, just in general, and it usually works out okay. That said, if you had the opportunity to say like list the 2 to 4 features you wanted them to cover, that would be a huge help. They'd probably really appreciate it, and I bet the content that you get back would be better. So the more details you provide, the better, like 90% of the time. So, okay. So Gary said, I asked not to use these 10 words. Okay, so there's a list of 10 words. If you take time to rewrite without these 10 words, you will see the writing improve greatly. Interesting. Very interesting. It probably gets rid of the passive voice a little bit there and just that sort of thing. Interesting, Gary. Yeah, really good tip. I had not thought of that. Wesley says, who comes up with the article topics for informational content? Me. I come up with everything just in general, or like I said, I'm having bandwidth issues on the keyword research side. So I'm going to work, I don't work much with people on keyword research, but my friend Jim in town from the 0 to 2000 starting from scratch case study, he's going to help me out because I trained him and I could go sit with him. We're going to go have a beer later and talk about keyword research. So, but basically, Wesley, I come up with the ideas or they're filtered through me. Like if I get a list of keywords, like I do make those assignments for the informational content. Ethan says, do I think a site should be profitable before you hire a writer for the site? No, not necessarily, but it does depend on your budget. So if you don't have a budget for it, or you're not sure about the niche site like idea or internet marketing in general, I would say it's okay to not hire a writer yet. I will tell you, it may be a good idea to just try and hire one writer to write one article so that you get used to the tools and you get used to the systems and just communicating with a virtual assistant of some kind. I think that's a good skill to have, even if you don't rely on it all the time. For example, here's a good way to do it. You could hire one writer to write one article one time a month. That's about $15 a month, and maybe you handle the editing and the other stuff. Like, I think $15 a month is like a reasonable thing to invest, and you get a little bit of a taste of, you know, not writing and what that can mean to like your site. Then hopefully within like 2 months, I would expect you to be making some money with your site if you're working on it. So, okay. Ethan says, do your articles show the author? You know, it depends on the theme and how you have it set up. If so, are they all you as the author? I'm curious, as they're all marked of you, then the voice of each article will differ per writer. Yeah. So on that point, it doesn't really matter. On different sites, I've had, you know, different writers listed or all the same one. And really the content manager / editor should tweak the content to have the voice sort of unified. But if I'm telling you straight up, it doesn't really matter. Most people are going to land on one page on your site, they're going to read it, and then they're going to buy something. Like, they're probably not going to care about the voice being different on different posts. And basically, yeah, there can be other authors listed. You don't even have to show the author on your site if you don't want to, or you could list them and have different alter egos on the site or personas on the site. But it really doesn't matter that much. Good question, though. Good question. Lachey says, are you hiring someone to find keywords at this point so that you can keep a steady flow of content? Yeah, so I sort of answered that. Good question, Lachey. Only highly like trusted people that are like in my personal network. Ethan says, how long should an article take to pay for itself? This is a tough one to answer. So if I'm saying I'm putting in 25 to 35 bucks per article, how long does it take for that article to make that? I really don't know. I don't know the answer to that. If I had to guess, I would say probably, 4 months or so, something like that. But that's an average, right? So I can tell you last year when I added those 200 articles, like my revenue went up a lot, and basically all those articles that I put up paid a little bit cheaper last year. I did a little bit more work myself last year. So it cost about $4,000 to get 200 articles published. Within 2 months, the revenue had gone up by more than what I invested. So basically it was paid for in 2 months. All of the content was paid for in 2 months or so. But if you're just looking at one individual article, it's probably like 4 months or something like that. Basically, what I'm saying is there were a handful of articles that I published, say like 5% of them, that brought in enough money, most likely, to cover all the other articles combined. And there were probably only a few of them. So it's just, the 80-20 rule, Pareto's law at work there. So Charmaine says, if the writers are doing one article per day, how long are these articles? On average, about 1,000 words or so. Ethan says, how often do I throw out an article after paying for it? Not often, right? So if I just had to guess, maybe like 2% or something like that. Typically it's, the trial. Like I hired a writer a little while back and it was a trial gig. If the first article turns out okay, I'm usually going to try and hire them again. The first article didn't turn out okay. I didn't hire her again, and I didn't use the article. I had it rewritten by someone else. But typically what will happen is I'll say, hey, this article sucks. I'll give it to my editor and content manager and say, hey, this one's terrible. Can you rewrite it some? Feel free to, get rid of the stuff you don't agree with, and so on. So very rarely do you have to throw one out. It may take a little more work. It may take an extra 30 minutes for the editor to clean it up. Usually there's something to work with, but it's rare when you actually have to throw it out. Ethan says, do I give the same article assignment to more than one writer? No. If you're hiring a writer and editor, have you figured out the actual cost per article? $25 to $35 or so. Ronan, hey, what's up? Lachey says, do you let your teammates communicate with each other like through a software like Slack? No, there's no, I would let them communicate with each other, but there's no reason to. Like the way I have the team set up, I have like a high touch ratio. It's a flat structure. Basically, I work with the writers directly. I work with the content manager directly. I could potentially hire like a project manager to do what I'm doing, but I don't care to do that. So I talked about this briefly the other day. I mean, basically, like I have the opportunity to like build the exact business that I want, or I could try and like put more managers in place, but I don't want to create a job for myself that I don't enjoy doing. And this is fine for me right now. I'll let you know in like a month or so, right? Like I may want to say pull a project manager on to, do a few of the key things that I'm doing right now. But at this point, I'm fine with it, and I don't feel like I need to get rid of it. Okay. Mary says, do I track the conversion rate for each writer's content? No, I don't. Let's see. Allison says, do I use sites like Answer the Public to find story ideas? No, I don't, but that sounds interesting. And Mary, that sounds interesting too, to track the conversion rate. But typically, like the content manager and editor, like usually smooths things out a little bit. So there are, proper calls to action and stuff like that. Steph says, amazing. Unsure what you're talking about, but thank you. Maybe maybe you're talking about me or someone else, but hopefully me. Okay, we're at 4 minutes to go. So I'm going to say 3 more minutes, and then I have to jet. So if you get your last questions in, I'll answer them without rambling. I like to have this. It's like a race against time here. Ethan says, do you find that you've had to curb your expectations at any point on the quality of the articles you receive? No. Kat says, have you come across a writer that you've hired and then it turned out that the content is not well researched? Yes, that happens sometimes. Ryan says, do I let the writer see my site? Not usually. They don't really need to. But, of course, the content manager has access to the site. They know what it is. Wesley says, how do I go about hiring an editor, and what exactly do they do other than editing the content? Usually I promote a writer. That is usually much cheaper than if you go look for a content manager or an editor. It's usually going to be more expensive. They'll also, you know what? I haven't hired many, but I know they're more expensive if you just look for that. So Wesley, and you know what? Can someone paste a link to the most recent hiring like hiring writers article in the content series? So Wesley, I tell you exactly what I have the content manager and editor do, and basically you just need to figure it out for yourself. I mean, what I am giving you is like a good template of like about 6 or 8 things that they do for me that really helped me. But just look at what you do on your site and then document that and then have them do it. Or if there's more stuff that you want to get off your plate, just have them do that. So cool, Steph and Lachey. Thanks for posting those links for me. Wesley, have a look at those. It should get you in the right spot. And it's the specific one with the checklist is the one Lachey sent, hire writers for niche and authority sites without stress. And Leo, yes, this will be on YouTube and it will be available on Webinar Jam. So yeah, you should get a link in a couple hours. Cool. I have to go. Thanks everyone for the questions. This was like really, really good questions. And I could tell that, working with VAs and hiring writers and stuff is something that sounds like, a lot of people do have issues with. And I mean, I've gone through like dozens of writers and I've worked with a lot of people overall. So I guess I do have like special insight. And for whatever reason, I mean, I get annoyed by so much stuff. For whatever reason, it doesn't annoy me, which is crazy. So, all right, everybody have a good day. We'll see you next time. And yeah.